The sun was still struggling to pierce the damp morning mist when Dawn Fletcher was already on the corner of Brigadier Avenue and St. James Street, right in the heart of London. Her tired arms assembled the metal structure of the stall with the precision of someone who had been repeating that ritual for almost a decade. Her calloused hands worked automatically, while her mind already calculated how many packed meals she would need to sell that day to make ends meet for the month. The electricity bill was overdue, the rent was due on Friday, and Raphael, her youngest son, needed new school supplies before the month was out. Dawn was 47, but her face, marked by the sun and time, carried the story of a lifetime of struggle. Since her husband had left her 12 years ago, she had become a mother, father, provider, and warrior. The homemade packed meal stall was not just her livelihood, it was her identity, her purpose, the only thing that kept her family afloat. Each pot of tropero beans, each portion of stewed chicken, each container of seasoned rice carried not just seasoning, but love and necessity in equal measure. The movement on the corner began slowly. The first customers were always the same, hurried workers who stopped quickly to grab breakfast before heading into the office building next door. Dawn knew them by name, knew who preferred stronger coffee, who liked toasted bread with extra butter, who had a peanut allergy. This intimate knowledge of her customers was her differential, the reason why many preferred her stall to the formal establishments in the area. It was on a Tuesday morning, while serving a regular customer, that Dawn first noticed his presence, an elderly man, perhaps in his 70s, standing on the other side of the street leaning against a tree. He didn't approach, didn't ask for anything, just observed. His clothes were simple, dark trousers that had seen better days and a faded button-down shirt, but curiously clean. His grey hair was neatly combed, and there was something in his posture, a silent dignity that caught Dawn's attention. Throughout that day, the man remained there, always at a safe distance, his eyes following every movement of the stall. Dawn tried not to think too much about it. After all, it was a busy corner and people passed and stopped all the time. But there was something different in that gaze. It wasn't the empty stare of someone lost, nor the aggressive look of someone looking for trouble. It was a look of hunger, mixed with something Dawn couldn't quite identify. Perhaps shame, perhaps hesitation. The next day he was there again. Same time, same tree, same posture. This time, Dawn paid more attention. She noticed that the man stayed from 8 in the morning until noon, when she began to pack away the leftover food. She also noticed that he never approached when there were many customers, as if he didn't want to be noticed, as if he were hiding his own need from others' eyes. This observation touched something deep in Dawn's heart, an old memory of her own mother saying that the worst hunger is the one people are ashamed to admit. On the third day, when she saw him again in the same spot, Dawn made her decision. It was almost 11 in the morning, the crowd had thinned, and she prepared a generous packed meal. Well-seasoned black beans, fluffy rice, a roasted chicken thigh with potatoes, crispy farofa, and a portion of sauté collard greens. She put everything in a sturdy container, grabbed a fork and a napkin, and crossed the street with determined steps. The man saw her approach and his eyes widened, a mixture of surprise and something akin to panic. He took a step back, as if he were about to flee, but Dawn spoke softly before he could move. "Hello, sir. I've noticed you've been here for a few days. I've brought you a hot meal. You don't need to be ashamed. We're here to help each other, aren't we?" The man looked at her for a long moment, his clear eyes studying Dawn's face as if trying to decipher a riddle. There were suppressed tears there, Dawn could see, but also a gratitude so profound that it needed no words. Finally, he extended his trembling hands and accepted the packed meal. "Thank you very much," he murmured, his voice hoarse and low, but with an intonation that surprised Dawn. It wasn't the rough voice she expected, but something softer, almost educated, with clear diction despite the evident emotion. Dawn smiled and returned to her stall, feeling a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the midday sun. She discreetly watched as the man sat under the shade of the tree and began to eat, each spoonful taken with an almost religious reverence. He ate slowly, savoring each bite, and when he finished, he carefully folded the napkin and held the empty container as if it were made of fine porcelain. In the following days, the ritual repeated. The man appeared at the same time. Dawn prepared a generous meal and crossed the street to deliver it. Words between them were few, just his thanks and her encouraging smiles. But there was a silent communication happening, a human connection that transcended the need for language. Dawn began to vary the menu, preparing different dishes for him, and noticed that he appreciated each one with the same solemn gratitude. But not everyone saw that gesture with Dawn's same compassionate eyes. Mrs. Iris, who sold costume jewelry at the stall next door, was the first to comment. "Dawn, you're wasting time and food on him. He could be dangerous, you don't know. And besides, do you think you have money to be giving away free food? Your situation isn't easy, everyone here knows that," Dawn replied without taking her eyes off the pot she was stirring, her tone firm but not aggressive. "Iris, I know you're worried about me, but that man isn't dangerous. He's just in need. And if I, who am also struggling, don't help, who will?" Mr. Morris, the owner of the newspaper stand, also offered his opinion during a casual conversation. "Dawn, you're too good. These people take advantage of folks like you. Tomorrow there'll be 10 asking, then 20. You need to think about your children before you go doing charity." These words hurt more than Dawn would have liked to admit, because they touched on her deepest fear. What if she really was being reckless? What if that generosity was putting Raphael and Amanda, her children, at risk? But every time these thoughts assailed her, she remembered the old man's gaze, the silent dignity with which he accepted the food, the way he always cleaned the spot where he ate before leaving everything cleaner than when he arrived. This was not the behavior of someone taking advantage, but of someone who still maintained their sense of decency despite the circumstances. A week turned into 2, then 3. The routine remained unchanged. The man appeared, received his meal, ate under the tree, and disappeared until the next day. Dawn began to worry on the days he didn't appear, wondering if something had happened, if he was okay. On the days he returned after an absence, she felt a disproportionate relief, as if she had reconnected with a distant relative. Dawn's customers had divided opinions. Some praised her kindness, saying the world needed more people like her. Others, especially the more hurried and pragmatic ones, thought she was wasting time and resources. There were even some who stopped buying from the stall, claiming they didn't want to be associated with someone who attracted that kind of people to the area. Each lost customer was a blow to Dawn's already tight finances, but she refused to change her attitude. At home, at night, while preparing dinner for Raphael and Amanda, Dawn sometimes found herself thinking about the old man. Who was he? How had he come to that situation? Did he have family? Children who cared about him? Or was he completely alone in the world? These questions haunted her, but she never asked him directly, respecting his privacy and his silence. Raphael, with his 14 years and the keen insight of adolescence, noticed his mother's concern. "Mum, you're different. Is everything okay?" Dawn smiled at her son, running her hand through his curly hair. "Everything's fine, my son. Just thinking about life, about people." Amanda, at 18 and about to finish high school, was more direct. "Mum, I heard Mrs. Iris commenting that you're giving free food to a homeless man. Is that true?" Dawn stopped what she was doing and looked at her 2 children, deciding it was time to be honest. "Yes, it's true. There's an old man who appears on the corner every day. He doesn't ask for anything, but I can see he's hungry, so I give him a packed meal." "But Mum, we barely have money for our own things," Amanda argued, her voice filled with genuine concern, not selfishness. Dawn sat at the table with her children, her calloused hands clasped over the worn surface. "I know things aren't easy, my children, but I can't turn my back on someone who's hungry. My mother, your grandmother, always said that we never become poorer by sharing. We only become richer in heart. And I believe that. Raphael, always the more sensitive of..." The 2 placed his hand on his mother's. "I think what you're doing is beautiful, Mum." Weeks turned into a month, then 2. Autumn was beginning to give way to winter in London, and the mornings were progressively colder. Dawn noticed that the man started appearing with a thin coat, clearly insufficient for the decreasing temperatures. She began to serve heartier soups, hot broths, that could not only nourish, but also warm from within. It was on a particularly cold morning. after almost 3 months of this daily ritual, that something different happened. Dawn crossed the street as usual with the prepared packed meal, but when she reached the tree, the man didn't just accept the food. He extended his other hand, offering Dawn a carefully folded cloth handkerchief. Dawn took the handkerchief, confused, and unfolded it. Inside, written in elegant, firm handwriting, was a short message. "My dear lady, there are not enough words to thank you for your kindness. In a world that has forgotten to look out for others, you reminded me that humanity still exists. May God bless you always." Dawn read and reread the words, surprised not only by the message but by the quality of the writing. That was not the handwriting of an uneducated person, but of someone who had clearly studied, who mastered the language with precision. She looked at the man with new eyes, noticing for the first time the small details she had overlooked. His erect posture despite his age, his hands which, though marked by time, were well kept, the way he held his cutlery with an etiquette that did not match his homeless appearance. "Who are you really?" she thought, but didn't ask aloud. "Thank you for the words, sir, but you don't need to thank me. We're just doing what's right." The man smiled for the first time, a sad but genuine smile, and Dawn returned to her stall with the handkerchief carefully tucked into her apron pocket, feeling that there was something much more complex in that story than she could imagine. The routine continued without apparent changes in the days following that handkerchief with the written message. Dawn kept that piece of fabric like a treasure, taking it out of her pocket in moments of greatest discouragement, when the bills seemed impossible to pay, or when the malicious comments from neighbors weighed too heavily on her shoulders. Those elegantly written words became her secret source of strength, tangible proof that her gesture, however small, mattered to someone. Winter had fully settled over London, bringing with it freezing mornings that made Dawn's fingers ache as she set up her stall. Sales dropped a little, as always happened this time of year, when people preferred quicker, warmer meals indoors. But Dawn remained steadfast, waking at 5 in the morning to prepare the packed meals, ensuring that each one was impeccable, that each dish carried the same love and care as always. The elderly man, whom Dawn now simply thought of as her silent friend, continued to appear religiously. She noticed that he started arriving a little earlier, perhaps to escape the more intense morning cold, and that he always brought with him a small plastic bag where he carefully stored the empty packed meal containers from the previous day, returning them clean and organized. This gesture touched Dawn deeply because it showed a respect and consideration that many of her paying customers did not demonstrate. It was on a foggy Thursday, when the clock struck almost 10 in the morning, that something extraordinary happened. Dawn was busy serving a group of junior office staff who worked in the nearby commercial buildings when she heard the unmistakable sound of powerful engines. She looked up and saw with growing surprise 2 gleaming black cars, clearly imported and very expensive, slowly pulling up to the corner. They were not the kind of vehicles that usually frequented that part of the city, much less at that time of day. The doors opened almost simultaneously, and from inside them emerged men in immaculate dark suits. There were 4 in total, 2 from each car, and all had that rigid, alert posture that Dawn immediately recognized as belonging to private security guards. Behind them, 2 other older men emerged, carrying leather briefcases and wearing eyeglasses. Lawyers, Dawn thought immediately, her heart beginning to race without knowing exactly why. The movement on the corner ceased as if someone had pressed a pause button. Dawn's customers stopped eating, passers-by slowed their pace, even Mrs. Iris abandoned her costume jewelry stall to get a better look. There was something profoundly intimidating about that scene, something that made the air feel heavier, more charged with expectation and fear. One of the men in suits, the tallest, approached Dawn's stall with measured steps. He was around 50, with perfectly combed grey hair and a face that revealed no emotion. When he spoke, his voice was firm and professional, but not aggressive. "Good morning. Are you the owner of this establishment?" Dawn nervously wiped her hands on her apron, feeling all eyes on the street fixed on her. "Yes, sir. Is there a problem?" The man exchanged glances with his colleague before continuing. "My name is Dr. Frederick Allen. I'm a lawyer. We are looking for information about a man who frequents this area. Do you know this gentleman?" He extended a photograph. and Dawn felt her blood run cold as she recognized the face. It was the elderly man, her silent friend, but the photo was from many years ago. In it, he was wearing an elegant suit, smiling at the camera in front of what appeared to be a sophisticated restaurant. His hair was darker, his face less marked by time, but his eyes were unmistakable. Those same clear, penetrating eyes that Dawn saw every day. "Yes, I do," she replied cautiously, her mind racing with 1,000 possibilities. What did he do? Is he in danger? Doctor. Alan did not answer immediately. Instead, he made another gesture to one of the security guards, who brought what appeared to be official documents. "Do you know where we can find him now?" Dawn was about to answer when she heard a familiar voice behind her. "No need, I am here." She turned quickly and saw the elderly man emerging from behind the tree where he usually sat. He walked with slow but firm steps, his posture suddenly more erect, his expression serene but laden with weariness. The crowd that had gathered on the corner seemed to hold its breath, collectively. What happened next left Dawn completely astonished. The lawyers, those serious and intimidating men, bowed slightly in a gesture of deep respect. The security guards approached not in a threatening way, but protectively, as if guarding someone extremely important. "Mr. Edmund," said Dr. Allen, his voice now filled with relief and reverence, "we have been looking for you for 3 months. Your family is desperate. Your company needs you." The elderly man, now identified as Edmund, raised a hand in a gesture asking for patience. "I know, Frederick, but before anything else, there's something I need to do." He turned to Dawn, who was completely paralyzed, trying to process what was happening. The woman who for 3 months had fed a man she believed to be a needy homeless person now discovered that something much bigger, much more complex was happening. "Mrs. Dawn," Edmund began, his voice now stronger and clearer than she had ever heard, "I owe you an explanation, and much more than that." The crowd around them grew, people emerging from buildings, stopping in the street, all wanting to understand what was happening on that ordinary London corner that had suddenly become the stage for something extraordinary. Mrs. Iris was gaping. Mr. Morris had completely abandoned his newspaper stand, and even the junior office staff who had been Dawn's customers minutes earlier remained glued to the spot. Edmund continued, completely ignoring the growing audience, his eyes fixed only on Dawn. "My full name is Edmund Taylor. I am the founder, and until 3 months ago, controlling owner of the Popular Taste Network, one of the largest restaurant chains in the United Kingdom." Dawn felt her legs weaken. Popular Taste. She knew that name. Every Briton knew it. It was a huge chain, with hundreds of units spread across the country, known for offering affordable quality meals. She herself had eaten there a few times on special occasions. But sir," she stammered, unable to form a coherent sentence. Edmund smiled sadly. "I know. You must be wondering what a man with the resources I have was doing on the streets accepting charity, and it's a fair question." He took a deep breath, as if about to reveal something he had kept for a long time. 3 months ago, I suffered a great disappointment. My son, Bernard, who took over the company's direction 2 years ago, began making changes that went against everything I believe in. He transformed our restaurants, which were created to serve the British people with dignity and fair prices, into cold profit machines. He fired old employees, reduced the quality of ingredients, increased prices. When I confronted him, he told me I was an old sentimentalist, that the business world had no room for romanticism. Edmund's voice trembled slightly, but he continued. "Those words shattered me, because I didn't build that company thinking about profit. I built it thinking about people like you, who work hard every day and deserve a decent meal at a fair price. I became so disillusioned that I decided to run a test. I wanted to know if genuine kindness still existed in the world, if there were still people who would help a stranger without expecting anything in return." He paused, his eyes filling with tears. "For 3 months I walked the streets of London. I endured hunger, cold, indifference. I was mistreated, chased away, insulted. No one helped me. No one looked at me as a human being, until I came to this corner and found you, madam." Dawn felt her own tears begin to fall. The entire corner was in absolute silence, every person present completely absorbed in the story unfolding before them. You fed me every day for 3 months, not because I asked, not because I paid, but simply because you saw another human being in need and decided to help. You, who clearly have your own financial challenges, shared what you had with me. And you did it even when the people around you criticized you, even when you lost customers because of it. Edmund took a step closer, his voice now choked with emotion. You saved me, Mrs. Dawn. You not only fed me, but you restored my faith in humanity. You showed me that good people still exist in this world, and for that, I am eternally grateful. Dawn was openly weeping now, her hands trembling. She wanted to say something, but the words wouldn't come. Around them, several people in the crowd were also discreetly wiping away tears. Dr. Allen approached respectfully. Mr. Edmund, we need to take you back. There are urgent company matters that require your attention. Edmund nodded but kept his eyes on Dawn. I need to go now, but this doesn't end here. Frederick will return tomorrow to speak with you, madam. There is something important I need to propose. Please trust me as I trusted you. Before Dawn could respond, Edmund did something that shocked everyone. He bowed deeply in a gesture of respect and gratitude, and then, escorted by the security guards and lawyers, got into one of the black cars. The vehicles drove away smoothly, leaving behind a stunned crowd and a completely transformed Dawn. She remained standing for a long moment, looking at the empty street where the cars had been. Around her, people began to approach, asking questions, offering congratulations, wanting more details. Mrs. Iris was pale, clearly regretting all the criticisms she had made. Mr. Morris's eyes were wide with surprise, but Dawn barely heard the commotion around her. Her mind was still processing everything that had just happened. The man she had fed out of pure kindness, expecting nothing in return, was one of the wealthiest businessmen in the United Kingdom, and he had said he had a proposal for her. What could it be? What could someone like Edmund Taylor want with a simple street vendor of packed meals? These questions would haunt her for the rest of the day and throughout the night, as she tried unsuccessfully to sleep and mentally prepared for what the next day would bring. Dawn barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, the images from the previous day returned with full force. The black cars, the men in suits, Edmund's revelation, the lawyer's look of reverence. It seemed like a dream, something impossible to have actually happened to her, a simple packed meal vendor from an outer borough of London. At 3 in the morning, she gave up trying to sleep and went to the kitchen to make coffee, her hand still trembling slightly as she held the cup. Amanda came downstairs shortly after, finding her mother sitting at the kitchen table staring into space. "Mum, didn't you sleep?" Dawn smiled weakly at her daughter. "I couldn't, my love. My mind won't stop thinking about what happened yesterday." Amanda sat next to her mother, holding her hand tenderly. "I still can't believe this is real. The gentleman you were feeding all these months was Edmund Taylor, the owner of Popular Taste Network. When you told me last night, I thought you had a fever." They laughed together, a nervous laugh that somewhat relieved the accumulated tension. "And he said he's going to make a proposal today. What do you think it could be, Mum?" Dawn shook her head, genuinely clueless. "I have no idea, Amanda. Maybe he wants to give me some money as a thank you, or maybe offer me a formal job in one of his restaurants, I don't know. But whatever it is, it's more than I ever could have imagined." Raphael joined them shortly after, still sleepy but with eyes gleaming with youthful enthusiasm. "Mum, everyone at school is going to know about this. You're going to be famous." Dawn laughed, running her hand through her son's hair. "I don't want to be famous, my son. I just want everything to be okay for us." But at that moment, surrounded by the 2 children she had raised with so much effort and sacrifice, Dawn felt a wave of gratitude, not for what might come, but for what she already had. Those 2 wonderful young people were proof that her hard work, her honesty, and her kindness had been worthwhile. The morning arrived enveloped in a thin mist that made everything slightly surreal. Dawn set up her stall as she always did, but this time with a growing anxiety that made every movement more clumsy. She knocked over a pack of napkins, forgot to light one of the burners, and had to remake the coffee because she had put in too much sugar. Her usual customers noticed her agitation, and many had already heard the rumors about what had happened the day before. "Mrs. Dawn, is it true that the man you were feeding was Edmund Taylor?" asked Sebastian, an accountant who bought breakfast from the stall every day. "Yes, it's true," Dawn replied, still processing the reality of those words. "You did a beautiful thing," Sebastian continued, his voice filled with genuine admiration. "The world needs more people like you." These words comforted Dawn, but also left her slightly embarrassed. She hadn't done anything extraordinary, just followed what her heart told her. She didn't expect recognition or praise, much less all the attention she was now receiving. It was exactly 10 in the morning when the black car returned. This time it was only one vehicle, more discreet than the previous day's entourage, but still commanding respect with its silent elegance. Dr. Frederick. Alan emerged wearing another impeccable suit, this time in navy blue. He carried a leather briefcase and had a serious but friendly expression. "Good morning, Mrs. Dawn. May I take a few minutes of your time?" Dawn nervously wiped her hands, nodded, and asked Mrs. Iris to keep an eye on the stall. She and the lawyer moved a few meters away, standing under the shade of the same tree where Edmund used to eat his meals. Dr. Allen opened his briefcase and took out some documents, but before showing them to Dawn, he began to speak in a measured and respectful voice. "Mrs. Dawn, Mr. Edmund asked me to come here today to explain the whole situation in more detail and to make an extraordinary proposal. But before that, he wants you to know the complete truth about what happened." Dawn listened attentively as the lawyer told the full story. Edmund had founded the Popular Taste Network 35 years ago, starting with a single popular restaurant in the East End. His mission had always been to offer quality food at affordable prices to the British working class. For decades, he built an empire based on this philosophy, refusing proposals from investors who wanted to make the business more profitable at the expense of quality and affordability. 2 years ago, at the age of 70, Edmund decided to step back from day-to-day management and hand over control to his only son, Bernard. But Bernard had different ideas. Educated in business administration in the United States, he viewed the business through a purely financial lens. He began implementing changes that increased profit but betrayed the essence of the company. Older employees, whom Edmund treated like family, were replaced by poorly paid temporary workers. Fresh ingredients gave way to industrialized products. Prices rose considerably. When Edmund confronted his son, there was a terrible argument. Bernard accused his father of being an outdated idealist, of not understanding the modern business world. Edmund, deeply hurt, decided to conduct his experiment on the streets. He wanted to know if his belief in human kindness still had a basis, if it was still worth believing that people cared about each other. "For 3 months, he lived as a homeless man," said Dr. Allen, his voice filled with emotion. "He faced indifference, contempt, even violence. He was expelled from establishments, ignored by hundreds of people, until he found you, madam." Dawn felt tears streaming down her face as she listened. "You didn't just feed him," the lawyer continued. "You treated him with dignity, with respect, and you did it without knowing who he was, without expecting a reward. It was exactly what he was looking for, proof that genuinely good people still exist in this world." Dr. Allen paused, allowing Dawn to process everything. "And now, he wants to do something in return. Not because he feels he owes you something, but because he sees in you the personification of what his company should be. Therefore he has a proposal." The lawyer opened the documents and began to explain. Edmund wanted to regain active control of his company and restructure it, returning to its original values. But to do this, he needed a symbol, something that would show everyone, including his son, what truly mattered, and he had found that symbol in Dawn. "The proposal is as follows," said Dr. Allen, pointing to the papers. "Mr. Edmund wants to transform your stall into the first unit of a new concept for the Popular Taste Network, a concept that returns to its roots, focused on real homemade food, made with love and sold at fair prices, and he wants you to be the manager and partner of this venture." Dawn blinked several times, certain she had misheard. "What do you mean, partner?" 10% equity participation in the unit, the lawyer explained. "You would own a part of the business. In addition to your manager's salary, you would receive a percentage of the profits, and more importantly than that, you would have an active voice in decisions about how the restaurant would be managed." Dawn's head spun. This was impossible, unreal, too big to be true. "But doctor, I don't have an education. I don't have experience managing a large restaurant. I only know how to make packed meals at my stall." The lawyer smiled for the first time since he arrived. "Mrs. Dawn, Mr. Edmund doesn't want someone with diplomas. He wants someone with the right heart. And he believes that everything else can be taught. He himself will guide you, and there will be a support team to help with the bureaucratic part. What he needs from you is exactly what you already do. Cook with love and treat people with dignity." Dawn looked at her. Simple stall, then at Dr. Allen, then at the documents he held. "I need to think about it, talk to my children." The lawyer nodded understandingly. "Of course. But there's something else Mr. Edmund would like. He wants you to visit the company's headquarters, get to know the business up close so you can make an informed decision. We can pick you up tomorrow at 9 in the morning, if that is convenient for you, madam." Dawn took a deep breath. Part of her wanted to refuse, to return to her simple, safe life, where she knew exactly what to expect. But another part, a part that had been dormant for years of struggling to survive, was waking up. It was the part that dreamed, that believed in possibilities, that dared to imagine a better future. "All right," she finally said. "I'll go." Dr. Allen smiled broadly. "Excellent. We will pick you up right here at 9 in the morning. And Mrs. Dawn," he extended his hand to shake hers, "it is an honor to meet you. Mr. Edmund can't stop talking about your kindness. He truly believes you will help save not just a business but a philosophy of life." After the lawyer left, Dawn returned to her stall in a state of semi-shock. Mrs. Iris immediately approached, her eyes wide with curiosity. "So? What did he want?" Dawn looked at her neighbor, at the simple stall, at the corner that had been her world for so many years. "He wants to change my life," she replied simply. That night, sitting at the table with Raphael and Amanda, Dawn told them everything. The two young people listened in respectful silence, their eyes widening more and more as the story unfolded. "Mum, that's incredible," Amanda said when Dawn finished. "You have to accept." "But what if I fail?" Dawn expressed her deepest fear. "What if I'm not good enough? What if I disappoint him?" Raphael held his mother's hand firmly. "Mum, you've spent your whole life being good enough. You were good enough to raise us alone. You were good enough to keep this business going for years. You were good enough to help a stranger when no one else did. You are more than good enough." Those words, coming from her teenage son, touched Dawn deeply. She realized that she had spent so much time worrying about survival that she had forgotten to believe in herself, to recognize her own strength and worth. "You're right," she said, feeling a new determination growing within her. "I'm going to do this, not just for me, but for both of you, to show that it's possible, that people like us can get there." The three hugged, crying and laughing at the same time, united by the hope of a future that finally seemed possible, and by the certainty that no matter what happened, they would face it together. The next morning arrived laden with anxiety and expectation. Dawn woke before her alarm, clock at 5 in the morning, and lay staring at the ceiling for long minutes, trying to calm the nerves that seemed to dance under her skin. She had chosen her best clothes the night before, a simple but clean white blouse and black dress trousers she rarely wore, saved for special occasions that never seemed to arrive. Looking at herself in the mirror after getting ready, Dawn saw a nervous but determined woman, someone who was about to enter a world completely different from her own. Amanda helped her mother comb her hair, pinning it in a discreet bun. "You look beautiful, Mum, and you're going to ace it there." Raphael appeared at the bedroom door with a cup of coffee. "Brought you coffee, Mum. You need to be strong today." Dawn felt her eyes well up. Her children had always been her safe harbor, her reason to continue even on the most difficult days. and now they were there, supporting her on this frightening but exciting journey. At 8:45, Dawn was already on the corner, her stall closed for the day, something that rarely happened. She had informed her regular customers the day before that she wouldn't be open that morning, and they had reacted with understanding and encouragement. Mrs. Iris stopped by to wish her good luck, her tone very different from the criticisms she used to make. "Go there and show them what you're capable of, Dawn." Exactly at 9 o'clock the black car arrived. Dr. Allen got out and opened the back door for Dawn with a gentle smile. "Good morning, Mrs. Dawn. Ready to meet your future?" Dawn got into the car, feeling completely out of place in that luxurious environment. The leather seat was soft, the air conditioning kept the temperature perfect, and there was even a small bottle of mineral water at her disposal. She tried not to appear dazzled, but it was impossible not to notice every detail of that new world. The journey to the Popular Taste Network headquarters took about 40 minutes. The building was in an affluent area of London, a modern glass and steel construction that stood imposingly against the blue sky. Dawn felt her stomach tighten when the car parked in front of the main entrance. "We've arrived," announced Dr. Allen. "Mr. Edmund is waiting for you, madam." They entered the main lobby, a spacious area with high ceilings, marble floors, and an elegant reception desk. Several people circulated through the area, all wearing expensive corporate attire, carrying briefcases and tablets, conversing in professional tones. Dawn felt like a fish out of water, conscious of her simple clothes and her calloused hands that no amount of cream could completely soften. While Dr. Allen quickly spoke with someone on the phone, Dawn approached the reception desk. The receptionist, a young woman of about 25, perfectly made up and wearing an immaculate grey suit, looked Dawn up and down with an expression that did not hide her disdain. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone making it clear she doubted Dawn had any legitimate reason to be there. "Good morning. I have a meeting with Mr. Edmund Taylor." The receptionist raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "Are you sure? I don't see your name on his schedule." Before Dawn could reply, a man in a suit passing through the lobby stopped and looked at her with ill-concealed curiosity. "Are you related to an employee? Visitor entry is through the side." Dawn felt her cheeks flush but kept her voice firm. "No, sir, I was invited by Dr. Allen for a meeting with Mr. Edmund." The man exchanged glances with the receptionist, both clearly skeptical. "Look, madam, this is a corporate building. If you're looking for a job, you need to leave your resume at the Human Resources Department, which is on the second floor." The humiliation burned, but Dawn was about to respond when she heard Dr. Allen's firm voice behind her. "Is there a problem here?" The receptionist and the man in the suit completely changed their demeanor upon seeing the lawyer. "Dr. Allen, we didn't know she was with you," the receptionist hastened to say. "Evidently not," the lawyer's voice was ice-cold. "This is Mrs. Dawn Fletcher, personal guest of Mr. Edmund Taylor, and you have just treated her with disrespect and prejudice." "But, doctor," the man began, "she didn't look—" "Didn't look what?" Dr. Allen interrupted, his voice rising slightly. "Didn't look rich enough to be here? Wasn't wearing expensive enough clothes? Allow me to remind you of something fundamental. Respect does not depend on clothes or bank accounts. And if you cannot understand that, perhaps you are working for the wrong company." The silence that followed was heavy. Several people in the lobby had stopped to observe the scene. The receptionist was pale. The man in the suit looked like he wanted to disappear. At that moment, the elevator doors opened, and Edmund Taylor emerged, accompanied by 2 assistants. He saw the scene immediately, and his face, usually gentle, hardened. "What is happening here?" Dr. Allen explained briefly, and Edmund's expression became even more severe. "So you humiliated my guest because she didn't dress according to your superficial standards?" He looked directly at the receptionist and the man in the suit. "Do you know what the last instruction I gave when I founded this company was? That everyone, from the simplest customer to the highest paid executive, be treated with equal dignity. Apparently that message has been lost." He turned to Dawn, his face softening immediately. "Mrs. Dawn, please forgive me. This should not have happened." Dawn, who had observed everything in silence, finally spoke, her voice calm but firm. "Mr. Edmund, you don't need to apologize. You did nothing wrong. but I thank you for standing up for what is right." Edmund smiled, an expression of pride in his eyes. "See," he said to everyone in the lobby who were now watching, in silence. "This is true dignity. It doesn't need expensive clothes or important titles. It's in character, in the way we treat others, especially when we are tested." He offered his arm to Dawn. "Come, we have much to discuss." They went up to the top floor where the executive meeting room was located. The space was impressive, with a huge noble wooden table, comfortable leather chairs, and a breathtaking panoramic view of London. But Dawn barely noticed the decor, her mind still processing what had happened in the lobby. Edmund personally served coffee, a simple gesture that touched Dawn deeply. "I'm sorry about what happened downstairs," he said again, "but perhaps it was instructive. You saw firsthand what happened to my company. People forgot the fundamental values. They forgot that before we are entrepreneurs or employees, we are human beings." Dawn took a sip of coffee, gathering courage to ask the question that tormented her. "Mr. Edmund, why me? There are so many more qualified people, with more education, more experience. Why choose a simple packed meal vendor?" Edmund sat opposite her, his clear eyes fixed on hers. "Because you have something that cannot be taught in any business school, Mrs. Dawn. You have heart. You have empathy. You understand instinctively that our business is not about selling food, but about serving people, and that is what my company lost and desperately needs to recover." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "When my son took control, he brought efficiency, modern systems, advanced management techniques. All of that is important, I won't deny it. But he forgot the soul of the business. He forgot that every customer is a person with a story, a family, dreams and difficulties. He turned everything into numbers on a spreadsheet." Edmund stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city below. "Do you know what the greatest success of Popular Taste was when I founded it? It wasn't the profit, although we were profitable from the beginning. It was the fact that families could eat together with dignity, that workers like you could have a decent meal without compromising their budget. It was the smile on our customers' faces, the gratitude in their eyes. That was what made me wake up happy every day." He turned to Dawn again. "And you, in your simple stall on the corner, do exactly that. You serve food with love, treat each customer as an important individual. That is exactly what I want back in my company." The meeting room door opened at that moment, and a tall, well-dressed man entered. He was around 40, with neatly cut dark hair and a serious expression that bordered on skeptical. Dawn immediately recognized the physical resemblance to Edmund. This was Bernard, the son. "Father, I came as you asked," Bernard said, his voice neutral but with an underlying tension. "Bernard, I want you to meet Mrs. Dawn Fletcher. Dawn, this is my son Bernard." The two greeted each other politely, but Dawn could feel the resistance emanating from the younger man. He quickly assessed her with his eyes, and she saw the same doubt she had seen on the faces of the receptionist and the man in the lobby. "Father, can we talk in private first?" Bernard asked. "There's no need," Edmund replied firmly. "Mrs. Dawn will be a fundamental part of what we're going to do from now on. She has the right to hear everything." Bernard took a deep breath, clearly trying to maintain his composure. "Father, with all due respect, this is madness. You want to hand over the management of a unit and 10% equity participation to someone who has no corporate experience, no background in administration, no knowledge of large-scale restaurant management." Dawn felt every word like a stab, because she knew Bernard was right on many points. She really didn't have those qualifications. But Edmund did not waver. "You are right, Bernard. She doesn't have those credentials, but she has something much more valuable. She has integrity. She has compassion. She has the ability to see beyond the numbers and see people." "Father, this is a business, not a charity." Edmund slammed his hand on the table, making Dawn and Bernard jump. "It's exactly that attitude that is killing my company," his voice echoed through the room. "When did you forget that businesses are made by people, for people? When did you decide that profit was more important than purpose?" "Father, I increased our profits by 30% in 2 years." "And you lost the soul of the company in the process," Edmund retorted. "Our employees are unhappy. Our customers complain. We lost what made us special." The silence that followed was charged with tension. Dawn wanted to disappear. She didn't want to be in the middle of that family conflict. But before she could say anything, Bernard spoke, his voice lower now, more controlled. "Father, I understand your concerns, and perhaps I went too far with some changes. But this," he gestured vaguely in Dawn's direction, "this is not the solution. You are making an emotional decision, not a rational one." Edmund looked at his son for a long moment. "Bernard, do you know what I've been doing for the past 3 months?" "I know, Father, and it was madness. It was a test to see if my faith in humanity still had a basis, and Mrs. Dawn passed that test when hundreds of other people failed." He turned to Dawn, who remained quiet in her chair. "But she is right to want a chance. Mrs. Dawn, I am not asking you to blindly trust me. I am asking you to give me a chance to prove that this idea can work. 3 months. Give me 3 months to transform your stall into a real restaurant, to train you, to show that kindness and profit can go hand in hand." Dawn looked at Edmund, then at Bernard, feeling the weight of the decision on her shoulders. All of this seemed too big, too important. But then she remembered her children, Raphael saying she was good enough, Amanda encouraging her to try. She remembered all the years of struggle, all the mornings waking before the sun to work hard, all the times she had helped someone even when she herself had little. 3 months, she finally said, her voice firm. "Give me 3 months, and I will give it my all. If it doesn't work, at least we tried. But if it works, you will have proved that doing good and doing business are not opposite things." Edmund smiled, his eyes shining with emotion. "Then we have a deal." The next 3 months were the most intense and transformative of Dawn's life. What was a simple corner with a packed meal stall turned into a bustling construction site. Edmund had spared no expense. A team of architects was hired to design a space that maintained the welcoming essence of the original stall, but in a permanent, professional structure. The land, which Edmund quickly acquired from previous owners, began to be prepared in the first week. Dawn observed everything with a mixture of enchantment and terror. During the day, she worked alongside Edmund and a team of consultants he had hired, learning about restaurant management, inventory control, large-scale food hygiene procedures, team management, and basic finance. At night, she studied alone at home, reading the materials Edmund provided her, taking notes, trying to absorb an entire universe of knowledge in record time. Raphael and Amanda witnessed their mother's transformation with admiration. She woke even earlier now, but not out of a need for survival, but out of enthusiasm. Her eyes shone in a way they hadn't seen in years. The tired, overwhelmed woman was gradually being replaced by someone renewed, full of purpose and hope. One of the first important decisions Dawn had to make was about the team. Edmund had made it clear that she would have complete autonomy to choose who would work in the restaurant. Dawn did not hesitate. She sought out other street vendors in the area, people she had known for years, honest workers who struggled every day in the same way she always had. Mark, who sold hot dogs 3 blocks away, was the first she invited. A 35-year-old man, father of 2, who had lost his formal job 5 years ago and had since supported his family with his street cart. "Dawn, are you serious?" he asked when she made the proposal, his eyes wide with disbelief. "As serious as I've ever been in my life, Mark. You're hard-working, honest, you know how to deal with customers. You're exactly the kind of person I want on my team." She also invited Joanna, a 60-year-old woman who sold tapioca in the nearby square. She invited Paul, a 22-year-old who delivered packed meals by bicycle. She invited Teresa, who had a natural juice stand. Each of them had a story of struggle. Each of them had demonstrated character and dignity in their small daily battles for survival. When Dawn presented her chosen team to Edmund, he was moved to tears. "You understood perfectly," he said, his voice choked. "It's not just about opening a restaurant, it's about transforming lives, about giving opportunities to those who deserve them, but never had a chance." Bernard, who had reluctantly agreed to support the project for the next 3 months, observed everything with ill-concealed skepticism. He appeared at weekly meetings, asked technical questions that Dawn often couldn't answer, pointed out potential operational problems. But even he couldn't deny the visible progress. The restaurant was taking shape, the team was being intensively trained, and there was a palpable energy of hope and determination in everything. During these months, Dawn developed a routine that demanded every ounce of her energy and commitment. 3 times a week, she went to the Popular Taste Network headquarters for training sessions. Edmund personally taught her about the company's history, the values that founded it, and how to maintain quality without sacrificing affordability. Other days, she worked at the construction site, supervising progress, giving her opinion on the kitchen layout, choosing wall colors and the type of furniture to be used. One of the most striking moments of this period occurred when Dawn was choosing the decor for the dining area. The interior designer had prepared several sophisticated options, with imported furniture and modern minimalist decor. Dawn looked at everything, felt it was beautiful but wrong, and finally spoke. "With all due respect to your work, which is wonderful, but this is not what I want. This is not what the people who are going to eat here want." The designer seemed offended, but Edmund gestured for her to continue. "The people who will come here are working people. They are people like me who wake up early, work all day, come home tired. They don't want to feel intimidated by overly chic decor. They want to feel at home, welcomed, comfortable." Dawn pulled out a piece of paper and began to draw, her hand moving with a confidence that surprised even herself. "I want wooden tables, simple but sturdy. I want comfortable chairs where people can sit for a while, chat, relax. I want decor that reminds them of a grandmother's kitchen with plants, family photos on the wall, warm colors. I want that when someone walks in here, they feel like they're walking into a friend's house." There was a moment of silence, and then Edmund began to applaud, his eyes shining. "Perfect. Absolutely perfect. This is exactly what I meant when I talked about having the right heart. You understood something that no designer, no matter how talented, could capture without living this experience." The designer, to his credit, recognized the wisdom in Dawn's words and worked with her to create exactly that atmosphere. The result was a space that was both professional and welcoming, clean and comfortable, dignified but not intimidating. As the restaurant took physical shape, Dawn's team also developed. She personally trained them, not only in culinary techniques, but in the philosophy that should guide the entire business. Every person who entered that restaurant should be treated with respect and dignity, regardless of how much they spent or how they were dressed. The motto she constantly repeated to her team was simple: "We treat every customer as we would like to be treated." Joanna, the tapioca vendor, flourished under Dawn's guidance. She had spent her life being ignored and disrespected, but now she was learning not only to cook on a larger scale, but to believe in herself. Mark discovered a natural talent for management, helping Dawn organize shifts and maintain inventory control. Paul, the young delivery driver, proved excellent at customer service, always with a genuine smile and a kind word. Teresa, the youngest of the group at 40, became Dawn's right hand in the kitchen. The two developed an almost telepathic synchronicity, creating and testing recipes that would be the restaurant's flagship dishes. They maintained the simplicity that characterized Dawn's food, but refined the techniques, ensuring consistency and quality in every dish. Throughout this period, Amanda and Raphael watched their mother transform. Amanda, who had always been the more pragmatic of the two, sometimes helped her mother with paperwork, organizing documents, and helping her understand complex spreadsheets. Raphael, with his more artistic nature, contributed by designing the restaurant's logo, a stylized version of his mother's old stall, but with a heart in the center. Edmund loved it so much that he adopted the design immediately. Bernard's visits during this period were tense but necessary. He remained skeptical, but Dawn began to notice something changing in his eyes. Perhaps it was the genuine enthusiasm of the team. Perhaps it was seeing his father, who had been depressed and disillusioned for months, regain life and purpose. Or perhaps it was simply witnessing that what he deemed impossible was, slowly but surely, becoming real. One day, about 2 months after the project began, Bernard arrived at the construction site and stood observing in silence. Dawn was training her team in customer service, simulating different situations they might face. She wasn't perfect. She occasionally made grammatical errors, but her passion and sincerity were undeniable. When the session ended, Bernard approached her. "Can I speak with you for a moment?" Dawn nodded, nervous. Interactions with Bernard always made her uncomfortable, as if she were constantly being tested and judged. They walked to a quieter corner of the construction space. Bernard stood in silence for a moment, as if carefully choosing his words. "I owe you an apology," he finally said, his words surprising Dawn completely. "When my father first suggested this project, I thought it was a ridiculous, emotional idea doomed to failure. I thought you didn't have what it took to make this work." Dawn remained quiet, letting him continue. "But I was wrong. Not about your technical limitations. You really don't have the training we would normally require. But I was wrong about what truly matters. You have something that I and many of our managers lost along the way. You genuinely care." He took a deep breath before continuing. "My father is happy for the first time in years, and it's not just because of the project itself, but because you validated everything he always believed in. You proved that he was right about how business should be conducted." Dawn felt tears prick her eyes. "Mr. Bernard, I'm very afraid of failing, of disappointing your father, of disappointing my team, of disappointing you." Bernard smiled, a genuine expression that softened his entire face. "Do you know what I realized watching you work? You can't fail anymore, because you've already proven the most important point. You've shown that kindness isn't weakness, that empathy isn't naivety, that caring for people and running a profitable business are not mutually exclusive." He extended his hand to her. "I still have my doubts about some operational aspects, I won't lie, but I want you to know that you have my support. Truly. And not just because my father asked, but because I believe you can make this work." Dawn shook his hand, feeling an enormous weight lifted from her shoulders. Having Bernard as an ally, not just a skeptical observer, would change everything. The final days before the inauguration were frantic. Every detail had to be perfect. The kitchen was equipped with professional equipment, but Dawn insisted on keeping some things from her original stall, like her favorite pots and her worn cutting board. They were talismans, connections to her roots, reminders of where it all began. The team had several days of rehearsal, preparing full meals and serving them to a group of invited testers. The feedback was consistently positive. The food was excellent, homemade, and flavorful. The service was warm and genuine. The atmosphere was welcoming without being sloppy, dignified without being pretentious. It was exactly what Edmund had envisioned. On the night before the inauguration, Edmund gathered the entire team in the now complete restaurant. He was visibly emotional as he looked around, seeing his reborn dream become a reality. "I want to thank each and every one of you," he began, his voice failing slightly. "You embraced this vision, worked tirelessly, believed when it was hard to believe. But especially I want to thank Mrs. Dawn." All eyes turned to her, standing beside her team, wearing a simple but clean uniform she herself had helped design. "Dawn, you not only saved me when I was lost on the streets, you saved my faith in humanity. You reminded me why I started this business so many years ago, and now you are helping to rebuild it based on those same principles. I have no words to express my gratitude." Dawn stepped forward, wiping away the tears that flowed freely down her face. "Mr. Edmund, I thank you. You changed not only my life but the lives of everyone here. You gave us a chance when no one else would, and I promise we will not disappoint you. We will make this place something special, a place where people will feel at home, where they will be treated with the respect they deserve." She looked at her team, at Joanna, Mark, Paul, and Teresa, each with tears in their eyes as well. "We will show that it is possible to do business without losing our humanity. We will show that serving others is not weakness, it is strength. And we will honor the trust that Mr. Edmund has placed in us." That night, when Dawn finally arrived home, it was past midnight. Her children were waiting up for her, eager to hear about the final preparations. She sat between them on the sofa, and for the first time in 3 intense months, allowed herself to completely relax. "Tomorrow's the big day," Raphael whispered, his eyes shining with excitement. "Are you nervous, Mum?" Amanda asked. Dawn thought for a moment before answering. Yes, I'm nervous, but I'm also at peace because I know I gave it my all. And no matter what happens tomorrow, she squeezed her children's hands, this is already my greatest victory. You two, seeing me fight, seeing me grow, seeing me believe in myself. If this inspires you to also believe in your own dreams, then it was already worth it. The three embraced for a long time, united by love and the hope of a future that finally seemed within reach. The inauguration day dawned with a clear blue sky, as if even the universe was conspiring for everything to go well. Dawn woke at 4:30, in the morning, not out of obligation, but because anxiety and enthusiasm simply wouldn't let her sleep anymore. She prepared carefully, putting on the uniform that meant so much to her. It wasn't just work clothes, it was the symbol of a complete transformation, of a lifetime of struggles that was finally leading somewhere extraordinary. When she arrived at the restaurant at 6 in the morning, she found she wasn't the first. Joanna, Mark, Teresa, and Paul were already there, each checking their respective areas, ensuring everything was perfect. The kitchen gleamed with cleanliness, the dining area was impeccably organized, and there was a delicious aroma of fresh bread that Teresa had started preparing even earlier. Everyone, Dawn called their attention, her voice trembling slightly with emotion. Before we start, I need to say something. No matter how many people show up today, no matter if everything goes perfectly or if we make mistakes, what matters is that we are here, together, doing something that many people said was impossible. You are my family now, and I am grateful every day to have you by my side. The five hugged in a circle, sharing a moment of deep unity before the storm that was to come. At 7 o'clock, when they opened the doors to the previously invited press, Dawn could hardly believe what she saw. There were journalists from several important outlets, television cameras, photographers. The story of Edmund living on the streets and being saved by the kindness of a street vendor had spread, and the press was fascinated by the narrative. Edmund arrived at 7:30, accompanied by Bernard and some company executives. He gave a brief speech to the press explaining the philosophy behind this new restaurant concept for the Popular Taste Network. This is not just another restaurant, he declared, his voice firm and full of conviction. This is a return to our roots, a reminder of why I started this business so many years ago. Here, every customer will be treated with dignity. Here, food will be prepared with love, not just efficiency. And here you will find the heart of popular taste in the person of Mrs. Dawn Fletcher and her exceptional team. When it was Dawn's turn to speak, she felt her hands tremble as she held the microphone. She wasn't used to speaking to cameras, to journalists, to an audience that went far beyond her usual customers on the corner. But when she began to speak, the words flowed naturally. I am just a mother who worked her whole life to support her children. I never imagined that one day I would be here in front of you, inaugurating a restaurant. But I learned that when we act with kindness, when we see others as human beings who deserve respect, extraordinary things can happen. This restaurant is proof that doing good and doing business are not opposite things. And I promise every person who walks in here that they will be treated like family, because that's how my mother taught me to treat everyone. The journalists asked several questions, some technical about the business, others more personal about Dawn's journey. She answered them all with honesty and simplicity, without trying to be something she wasn't. Her authenticity was palpable, and this was reflected in the faces of the journalists, many of whom seemed genuinely touched by the story. At 9 o'clock, the doors were officially opened to the general public, and what happened next exceeded all expectations. A huge queue formed, stretching for 2 blocks. There were people of all kinds, local, workers who knew Dawn from her old stall, curious people who had read about the story in the press, families who wanted to support the new concept, even some executives from nearby offices who had been touched by the narrative. Dawn's team worked tirelessly, but always maintaining the human warmth and individual attention she had emphasized so much during training. Every customer was greeted with a genuine smile. Every order was prepared with care. Every person who left the restaurant took with them not only a satisfying meal, but an experience that touched their heart. Around midday, when the movement was at its peak, Dawn noticed something that made her pause for a moment. She saw an elderly man enter, clearly a homeless person by the appearance of his clothes. He looked around with a mixture of curiosity and hesitation, as if unsure if he was welcome. Some customers watched him with visible discomfort. Dawn immediately approached him, her heart aching with the memory of Edmund in that same situation months ago. "Good morning, sir. Welcome. What can I serve you today?" The man looked at her in surprise, clearly not expecting to be treated with such kindness. I saw people coming in and thought maybe, but if it's not allowed, I can leave." Dawn gently held his arm. "You are more than welcome here. Come, I'll find you a good table." She led him to a table near the window, completely ignoring the glances of some uncomfortable customers, and personally served him a full and generous meal. She charged nothing. When some customers questioned it, she replied firmly but gently. This restaurant was founded because someone decided to help another person without expecting anything in return. We will not forget our origins. Every person who comes in here, hungry, will be fed, regardless of whether they can pay or not. Edmund, watching from afar, felt tears roll down his face. She had understood completely. It wasn't just about running a profitable business. It was about keeping humanity at the center of everything. Bernard, beside his father, shook his head in admiration. "Father, I was completely wrong. About everything. She's not just a good manager. She's exactly what our company needed. Someone to remind us why we do what we do." The day unfolded into an absolute success. When they finally closed the doors at 9 in the evening, exhausted but radiant, Dawn gathered her team for a moment of reflection. "We did it," she said, her voice choked. "We didn't just open a restaurant. We proved it's possible. We proved that kindness isn't weakness, that caring for people isn't incompatible with success. And this is just the beginning." The following 6 months were a whirlwind of success after success. The restaurant was not only profitable, but exceptionally profitable. More important than the numbers, however, were the stories. Stories of customers who became regulars because they felt truly welcome. Stories of employees who flourished in a work environment based on mutual respect. Stories of people who were fed for free when they couldn't afford it, keeping alive the essence of kindness that had given rise to everything. The press continued to cover the story, transforming Dawn into a kind of unexpected celebrity. She was invited to give interviews, participate in television programs, speak at entrepreneurship events. But despite all the attention, she remained the same humble person, always insisting that the success belonged to her team, to Edmund, to everyone who believed. Bernard, who had initially been the biggest skeptic, became the biggest advocate for the model. He began implementing some of Dawn's philosophies in other units of the Popular Taste network, always with her as a consultant. The company began to transform, slowly but consistently, returning to its foundational values without sacrificing modern efficiency. It was on a Friday afternoon, 6 months after the inauguration, that Dawn received an unexpected phone call from Dr. Allen. "Mrs. Dawn, Mr. Edmund would like to meet you at headquarters tomorrow at 10 o'clock. There's something important he needs to discuss with you, madam." Dawn felt a pang of anxiety. Was it a problem? Had she done something wrong? But the lawyer's voice was friendly, so she decided not to worry too much. On Saturday morning, she arrived at headquarters promptly. This time, the reception was completely different. The receptionist, a new employee, greeted her warmly by name. Employees passing through the lobby recognized her and stopped to greet her. She was now respected not for her clothes or position, but for what she had accomplished. Edmund received her in his personal office, not the formal meeting room. Bernard was also present, as were Dr. Allen and some other executives Dawn had met in recent months. "Mrs. Dawn," Edmund began, a wide smile on his face, "I called you here to share some extraordinary news. The restaurant you manage has not only met all our expectations, it has dramatically exceeded them. In 6 months, it has become the most profitable unit in our entire network, and more importantly, the most beloved by customers and employees." Dawn felt her heart race, but remained silent, waiting for him to continue. "Because of this success, Bernard and I have decided to expand the concept. We will open 12 new units in the next 18 months, all based on the model you created. And we want your active participation in this." He paused dramatically before continuing. "But there's something else. As recognition not only for what you've done, but for what you represent, We are offering you 10% equity participation in each of these new units. Furthermore, you will be promoted to Director of Culture and Values for the Popular Taste Network, a new position we created specifically to ensure that we never again lose sight of what truly matters. Dawn felt her legs weaken. She held onto the nearest chair, trying to process what she had just heard. "Mr. Edmund, I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Bernard interjected, smiling. "Say you'll continue showing us how to do this the right way." Tears began to fall freely down Dawn's face. She thought about her journey, from that morning almost a year ago, when she first saw Edmund observing her stall from afar. She thought about all the years of struggle, of waking before the sun, of worrying if she could pay the bills. She thought about her children, about how she had desperately tried to give them a better life. And now everything was changing in a way she could never have imagined. "Yes," she finally said, her voice firm despite the tears. "I accept, and I promise I will honor that trust every day." The following months were a new journey of learning and growth. Dawn traveled across the United Kingdom, overseeing the opening of new units, training new teams, always with the same principle. Treat every person with dignity, cook with love, never forget where we came from. Each new unit was inaugurated with the same philosophy, and each became a success not only financially, but humanly. Amanda received a full scholarship to study business administration, inspired by her mother's journey. Raphael discovered a talent for design and began creating visual materials for the network. The family that once struggled to survive now prospered, but never forgot their roots. A year after the inauguration of the first restaurant, the Popular Taste Network organized a grand event. It was the inauguration of the 12th unit of the new concept, this time in an outer borough of London, exactly the kind of place Edmund had always wanted to serve. Thousands of people attended. There were representatives from the press, local authorities, employees from all units, loyal customers, and, most importantly, members of the local community who would finally have access to a quality restaurant in their own neighborhood. When it was time for the inauguration speech, Edmund called Dawn to the stage. She went up, still a little uncomfortable with all the attention, but much more confident than she had been a year ago. "When I offered that first packed meal to Mr. Edmund," she began, her clear and firm voice amplified by the loudspeakers, "I wasn't thinking about recognition or reward. I was simply doing what I thought was right. But what I learned on this journey is that kindness is not an isolated act. Kindness generates kindness. Respect generates respect. And when we put people first, when we treat every human being with the dignity they deserve, we not only do good, but we create something sustainable, something that can change lives." She looked at Edmund, who stood beside her with tears in his eyes. "This man," she continued, "gave me a chance when I was nobody, when I had nothing but my will to help. He taught me that success is not measured only in profits, but in how many lives you touch, in how many people you help to grow. And now together we are proving that it is possible to build an empire based on kindness, on respect, on love for others." The crowd applauded, many with tears in their eyes. Dawn saw familiar faces in the audience. Mrs. Iris, who now worked in one of the new units, Mr. Morris, who had become a loyal customer, other street vendors she had helped get formal jobs in the network. But the most moving moment came when she stepped down from the stage. An elderly man, poorly dressed but with dignity in his eyes, approached her shyly. "Mrs. Dawn," he said, his voice trembling. "I'm John. You don't know me, but I was there that day at the first restaurant when you served that other homeless gentleman. I saw how you treated him with respect when others looked at him with disdain. Since that day, I always come back, and for the first time in years I feel like a person again, not just someone invisible." Dawn hugged the man, letting her tears fall freely. "You have always been a person, John. You have always been important, and you will always be welcome anywhere I am." That night, after the event ended and the crowds dispersed, Dawn stood alone for a few minutes in the newly inaugurated restaurant. She walked through the empty dining area, touching the wooden tables, feeling the energy of the space. She thought about her journey, about how a simple choice to offer food to a stranger had changed not only her life, but that of so many other people. When she finally returned home, it was past midnight. Amanda and Raphael were waiting up for her, as they always did on big occasions. She sat between them on the same sofa where so many important conversations had taken place. "Mum," Raphael began, "do you realize how much you've changed the world around you?" Dawn smiled, putting her arms around her children's shoulders. "I didn't change the world, my loves. I just did what I thought was right. But I learned that when each of us does what is right, when we choose kindness instead of indifference, when we see others as human beings worthy of respect, then we do change the world. One plate of food at a time, one act of kindness at a time, one person at a time." She looked out the window at the illuminated city outside, thinking of all the Edmunds in the world who were lost, of all the Johns who felt invisible, of all the people who just needed someone to see their humanity. "And do you know the most incredible thing?" she continued, her voice soft but full of emotion. "It's that I didn't do anything special. I just treated someone as I would like to be treated, and that should be normal, not extraordinary. My dream is that one day, stories like mine won't be news, but rather the way we all live, every day." The three were silent for a moment, absorbing the depth of those words. Then Dawn got up, went to her room, and returned with something in her hands. It was the handkerchief Edmund had given her almost a year and a half ago, with that first written message. "I keep this," she said, showing her children, "to never forget that it all started with a simple gesture, and to remember that the greatest asset we can have is not in the bank, not in titles or positions. It's here," she touched her own chest, "in the heart, in the ability to feel compassion, to act with kindness, to see others as equals." That night, before sleeping, Dawn knelt beside her bed, as her mother had taught her so many years ago. She gave thanks, not only for the material blessings she now had, but for the journey, for the lessons learned, for the people she had met. She gave thanks for having maintained her humanity, even in the most difficult moments, for having chosen kindness when it was easier to choose indifference. And then, with a smile on her lips and peace in her heart, Dawn Fletcher, the packed meal vendor who became an entrepreneur, the woman who proved that kindness and success can go hand in hand, finally slept, knowing that she had not only changed her own life, but had touched countless others, proving that the greatest investment we can make is simply in being human to each other. The end of the story. Dear listeners, we hope that Dawn and Edmund's story has touched your hearts as much as it touched ours in telling it. This journey reminds us that simple gestures of kindness can have extraordinary consequences, that we should never underestimate the power of treating someone with dignity and respect. If this story has inspired you, be sure to subscribe to our channel for more narratives that celebrate the best of human nature. Leave a like if you believe, like Dawn, that kindness is never wasted. And share in the comments, have you ever helped someone without expecting anything in return? Or perhaps you've been helped in a time of need? Your stories inspire us to continue bringing content that touches the soul and reaffirms our faith in humanity. We are here every day with new stories that will move, inspire, and remind you of what truly matters in life. Until the next story, and remember, the kindness you offer to the world always finds its way back to you.